Hello good people of YouTube, welcome to episode 58 of What Makes This Song Special. Firstly, this week I'd like to apologise. I know that I've not been as consistent over the last few weeks, over the last couple of months actually, with my sort of weekly plan for an episode. Between holidays and then just really busy playing lots of weddings and also just I got this kind of crazy cold about 4 weeks ago that's just lingered on me for like a whole month of coughing, and so I was almost making an episode last week and I thought I won't even make it through the video without this tickly annoying cough, which seems to be on its way out now thankfully. So yeah, I'm back, hopefully back to a weekly episode. Apologies for the delay. As always, I'll be telling a wee story that reminds me of a song. You know, what does this song mean to me from an emotional point of view? Why is the song special? And then I'll talk a wee bit about the song, the singer of the song, and then a little part two will appear at the end, some clickbait for you to take you to my my cover version of the song in a part two video. So yeah, we're going to go back this week to early 1991. This isn't a very exciting story. I probably shouldn't say that at the start and have you sort of switch over, but it's not like one of my very funny stories. The last one a couple of weeks ago was a funny story. Sometimes are sad stories. This is just like a little, and you'll see why at the end, but it's just a little story that a song took me back to. So early 91, I would have been about 9 years old. We're living in a place called Flinders Avenue in the south side of Glasgow, and life was good. There were so many amazing things that made that era special. I've spoken about it in another episode before, and in the same way that I've always felt jealous of my parents for the sort of awesome eras of the 60s and 70s that they got to experience firsthand, especially for the music from those eras. I feel sorry for the kids of the current generation who missed out on the 80s and 90s. There was just so much happening, and we were too young to realise how amazing it was. Certainly the 80s part anyway, I was just like a really young child in the 80s at primary school, and the first computers that were attainable to normal folk, the first portable games consoles like the Game Boy, the first electronic music, even though I hated electronic music at the time, skateboards, Walkmans, cassette tapes, the first ever video players and recorders, iconic toys, the wrestling, hair rock bands, boom boxes, snap bracelets, Coca-Cola yo-yos, MTV music videos, neon clothing, mixtapes, so much stuff. So much stuff that was really awesome and really of that time. And it was just an incredible time to be a kid. And probably if we were to go back in time and ask every generation for thousands of years, they would have special things about their generations, of course, as well. I'm not so naive as to think that just because it was my generation, it was more special than the other generations, but it was an incredible time to be a kid. The world was changing more rapidly in the late 80s and early 90s than probably ever before, certainly from a technological point of view. And that age was just beginning, and we had no idea what to expect or what was about to be available to us as consumers. It was just utterly mind-blowing, all the different things that were appearing month after month, after year, at the speed that technology was progressing at. But at that point, my life was pretty normal. It was pretty, I don't mean it wasn't exciting, it was good fun, but it wasn't like really exciting compared to maybe the folk who were at the sort of vanguard of designing these types of products. We were just living in a house in a nice street, went to school, played with our friends, and most weekends I saw my gran and papa for a walk in Pollock Park, which was it's a wonderful, huge park in the south side of Glasgow. And my grandparents lived in Shawlange, which was quite close to the park, and they walked there almost every day of their lives. And we would meet them there at weekends, and we really loved going to kind of catch up with them and catch up with our cousins, Peter and Lindsay, who used to always come along as well. And the norm was for us to all meet up on a Saturday morning, and then for us to beg my mum to let them come back to ours for a sleepover, which is what happened pretty much every weekend. So rather than mum and dad having 3 kids to look after, they had 5, which I suppose in hindsight was quite unfair, but it was great fun getting to hang out with my cousins every weekend. And so today's song in question takes me back to a random weekend that we didn't meet my grandparents at the park because they were on holiday down in Tunbridge Wells, which is where my Auntie Jeanette and Uncle Ricky and my other cousins Richard and Nicola stayed, and they promised to bring us back a wee holiday present, which we were all really excited about. So I remember all weekend we're thinking, what are Gran and Papa bringing us back? And of course our Glasgow cousins came over to stay at ours on the Saturday, and I remember it being a kind of rare sunny day in Scotland, and my mum took us all for a walk down to the wee row of shops at Clarkston, and there was a shop called R.S. McCall's, which was a kind of big supermarket, a big kind of newsagents that also sold some things you would maybe get in a supermarket, like, food essentials, and there was a wee post office at the back and stuff. So kind of a big newsagents. And they always had like a great selection of magazines, and we'd always go over and look at the magazines, and you used to quite often get free things in magazines, as you still do, I'm sure. Even though I think the last time I brought my kids a magazine recently, it was like nearly £10, which is madness. So I don't know how much they were back then. Maybe they were relatively the same. So I remember this. Mum decided to treat us as she always did, and she bought us all a Feast ice cream, which was like a kind of 80s, 90s version of a Magnum. It was a great little ice cream. I don't know if they still sell them. And she got us a magazine with 2 free games sellotaped to the front. And they were cassettes for our Commodore 64. This was the first computer that we ever owned. And you had to load the cassettes for ages to play a game, and you hoped and prayed the whole time that it wouldn't crash, because if it did, and it often did, you would have to start again, and then you'd have to wait another, 20 minutes for the game to load, so you could play the game, and then it would load for the next level. And the kids now don't know how lucky they are. And we'd been playing, we'd been loving the Dizzy games. The Dizzy games were like a wee kind of puzzle game where you controlled this little egg, and you had to save a princess. It sounds rubbish when I describe it like that, but it was really good. It was really fun. But this magazine, the free games were called Slightly Magic and CJ in the USA, and these were 2 free games that we'd got. I don't know if they were like demos and you had to buy the full version, or if they were like old games that they were just giving away free. I can't remember, but we were all over the moon, all excited to go home and play them, which we did all night on our sleepover, playing these games on the Commodore 64. And the next day my mum took us all to Central Station in Glasgow to pick up my Gran and Papa from their train journey back home from Kent, and we waited with huge anticipation for our presents, not knowing what we were going to get. And I can't remember exactly what everyone got, but I remember I got a cassette tape of the Simpsons single Deep Deep Trouble, which was Bart Simpson rapping. Wonderful. Which I was over the moon with. I think they must have known. I presume my mum told them that's what I was wanting, because it was on my list of things that I wanted at that point. And my big cousin Peter got a cassette of Roxette, Joyride, which was a band I hadn't heard at the time. And in the car on the way home, we sort of fought over who got to play their tape in the cassette player in the car on the way home. And in the end, we had to settle for listening to both tapes back to back. Deep Deep Trouble was, of course, like everything that's ever been made by The Simpsons, a masterpiece. It was a great little pop song. Silly, but just fantastic. I remember really enjoying the Roxette song when Peter got his turn to put his tape on. It was cool, it was pop, but it had a kind of like rock edge to it. And there were some nice guitars on it, which is always important to me. And I forgot all about that song for many, many years. And recently it was playing in a shop that I was in, and I was just instantly transported back to that weekend. And as I said at the start of the episode, it's not an exciting, funny story. It's just a nothing weekend. It wasn't a special holiday. It wasn't somewhere exotic. It wasn't anything, but it was great. It summed up that weekend kind of summed up a whole chapter of my life at that age. One that was really amazing, but when you're a kid and you've got no worries and your cousins are coming to stay overnight, it's the greatest thing in the world. A time where your grandparents are still around and we all got to see each other all the time, you know, and it's like things that you think are going to last forever, and then you don't really appreciate them until you're sort of looking in the rear view mirror of life. But just amazing times. And I think probably everybody watching will remember silly little days like that, or weekends where it's not a massive event, but just like a weekend that reminds you of just makes you happy when you think back to it. And maybe there's a song that's attached to that as well. So leave a wee comment if there's a song that reminds you of a weekend like that, or if this song is special to you for another reason. Maybe it reminds you of a holiday or something that happened in 1991 when the song first came out. So a little bit about the song, as always. Joyride is, of course, by the Swedish band Roxette. Actually, more of a duo than a band. Marie Fredriksson was the female singer, and Per Gessle, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, was the male singer and guitarist. The rest of the instrumentation was provided by session musicians and ghost musicians. But the song was written by Per Gessle, and it was inspired by a note that was left on his piano from his wife that said, "Hello, you fool, I love you." And she just left it on his piano one day, and he decided to incorporate the words into an idea that he had, which of course became the chorus of the song. It was one of Roxette's biggest hits and one of the most successful songs of the early 90s, topping the charts all over Europe, the USA, Australia, Canada, pretty much everywhere. As I mentioned, both members of Roxette sang, but Marie Fredriksson was really the main vocalist for most of the songs, with Per Gessle providing a lot of backing vocals and counterparts, and he was the main singer on some songs, and he was the main singer on today's song, Joyride. But I'm going to talk about Marie Fredriksson because she was more the voice that you remember when you think of Roxette, because she was the one who sang on most of the big hits. Marie Fredriksson had such an iconic 80s voice, and I don't know if it's because there are so many great 80s songs that you can associate with her, but her voice for me just sums up the tone of the 80s female pop singer, with the slight difference of her having that little Swedish accent that sort of shines through in her voice on certain words, which makes it unique. And she was able to sing the soft pop stuff really well, but also had the ability to extend her range right up and belt out these big power rock anthems with some real grit on the top as well. And with her really cool peroxide short hair, leather outfits, dark punky sort of vibe, she just epitomised a big part of the 80s. Fantastic singer. So there you go. A little short nothing story this week, as I said, but that's the point. It doesn't have to be big life events that songs remind us of. A song can take you back to a rainy day in the house and just remind you of what was going on in your life at that time, or even just what was going on in your head at that time. And that's why every song, I think, is special in its own way. So please have a listen to my cover version of the song, which will pop up here or here in the next few seconds. Leave a comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and tune in next week for another song and another story. Thank you.